Hey, what's up, White Knuckle Army? Welcome to episode number 7 of the White Knuckle Podcast. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 7. Today, Todd Pringnitz and I have the privilege of speaking with the owner of Lone Wolf Portable Tree Stands, Jared Schlipf. Today was a really fun show to do. It's always easy to talk about a product that you have a personal deep belief in, and I think after listening to the first couple minutes of this show, you'll get a sense of the passion that Todd and myself have for this product. I began using the product about 8 years ago, and Todd's been using it for way longer than I have, and both of us deeply believe in the product and its ability to do the job that it says it's going to do, and that's to be your silent partner. And your silent partner, it definitely is. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation as we speak with Jared from Lone Wolf about a myriad of topics, one of them being tree stand maintenance in the off season. Hey everybody, thanks again for joining us here on the White Knuckle Podcast. First, I've got to say thanks to Jared for coming on the show, and then give a shout out to my co-host Todd over there in Iowa. Hey guys, how's it going today?
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you so much. I always look forward to talking to Jared and anything about Lone Wolf Tree Stands, because it's one of my passion products, I guess you could call it.
Well, before we get too far into this, I just feel compelled to say that since I got involved with White Knuckle now 9 years ago, I had never used a tree stand other than the one I went to Farm and Fleet and bought. And, you know, I'm glad I didn't kill myself in the process of using that. But the first time I went down and we were in this park in Mount Pleasant, Todd, if you remember, and you showed us the Lone Wolf and how to use it, I just looked at Dave and I'm like, we need to get some of these. Holy cow! And man, I'll just say that it certainly, you hear it all the time. It changed the way we hunted, and it absolutely did change the way we hunted, because the trees that we didn't get our stands in before suddenly became relatively easy to get our stands in. So from that standpoint, I've been nothing but impressed with the versatility and the quality of the product.
Sure. Well, Jason, it's interesting. You say some of those things because it's something I hear, on the phone from customers every day, day in and day out. It never gets old. But the fact that, a guy for the first time getting into, say, a Lone Wolf hang-on stand with the climbing sticks totally changed the way he hunted. And, what I hear over and over is, man, I wish I would have just pulled the trigger on this 10 years ago. I missed so many opportunities, but I had no idea that I could even, do some of the things that I do today with my Lone Wolf. And as Todd knows, and as you know now, Jason, you're really limitless as far as where you can go as far as a hang and hunt situation, and sliding in. It's really one thing that we want to do is educate more and more people when they they set a hang-on and sticks aside as an option for a mobile unit. And once they realize that, hey, you can take this type of setup, a Lone Wolf hang-on and sticks, slide in undetected, just as quiet, if not quieter, you're not cutting any branches, and you can get into these crooked trees that actually break your silhouette better than a straightforward tree. And I think Todd can add to that, but there's so many times that guys go into these thick bedding areas now where these mature bucks are hanging out, especially during the rut, and a place that they couldn't have got to with a conventional stand or even a climber necessarily, but being able to actually slide right in underneath their nose and get the job done. And it happens over and over and over. And we just want to bring that style of hunting to more people so they understand that option is available.
And I like at some point don't even know where to start, because I'm like, I could talk about Lone Wolf until I get blue in the face and die. But just to kind of tell a quick story, one of the guys that works for us here at Wicked, his name's Trevor, and he's a local Iowa boy. Doesn't have a ton of money, grew up hunting with his dad and family, and was using a lot of the same types of products that everybody else uses. We all used when we were growing up, some of the junky hang-on ones. And he's been watching my success over the years with this run and gun style. And so I helped him get on a piece of property and I told him where I would go and how I would do it. And he went out there, set up his stand, and shot a buck like 20 minutes later, something like that. And he came back the next day and he just was like, well, you were right. I hate to admit it, but that's just unbelievable. He couldn't believe how going in the first time like that and setting up can be so effective, because the first time you hear people doing it, Jared, I mean, you same thing, and Jason, you kind of think like, yeah, right, these guys are crazy. How can you actually go out in the woods and set up a tree stand and kill these bucks right then? And I think a lot of it's just because until you use a lone wolf and set one up for the first time, you're still thinking in old tree stand world, which is the metal chains, the fabricated tree stands where you can't literally pick the things up without making noise. Lone wolf is not that stand, and that's the only reason you're able to do these types of setups is because you truly can be 100% silent to the point of making no metal noise during a setup. And I think sometimes people think we're lying or embellishing that. But Jared, I mean, is it not the truth? It's unbelievable what you can do with these stands. And again, until you use one or really talk to somebody who you know, that you trust, it's just that you have an aha moment when you try it for the first time. You're just like, oh my Lord, I've been making it so much harder on myself all these years just because hanging tree stands is a pain. It takes a lot of time and energy, and using some of this other equipment out there, I can see why guys don't move very much. It's because I wouldn't either. I mean, it's like trying to bring a jungle gym and set it up in a tree out in the woods during season. You just can't get away with it.
Yeah,
and I mean, dude, you guys have heard. Right. I've hunted with guys who are using some of these fabricated aluminum climbers. Some of the bigger names. I'm not going to name any, but just following them through the woods, I was kind of dumbfounded. Like, you expect to actually go out here and kill something, and it sounded like he was dragging a pile of aluminum through the timber, and every sapling he hit, tink, 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 and it's just like, you can't. If you want to kill these mature dominant deer that live in these areas that, you know, not a lot of many guys can, you gotta eliminate those things that like noise going in. But lone wolf is in a class of its own, and Jared, I can't thank you enough for the product you guys produce. The quality level is just exceptional, and I think when people see lone wolf for the first time, they kind of get it just when they see the product itself, just because it's beautiful product. You can tell the quality is there. And you want to tell us a little bit about your manufacturing operations here in the States, sure?
Sure. You know, and to add to some of that, you know, Lone Wolf has always been, being an American-made product, we've always been a little more expensive than some of the other stands on the market. Things now are starting to change. I mean, if you see some of these other, you know, import-type stands that, you know, I talk about, they're priced right there with us, if not higher. And as you know, you've been around a long time, involved with what we're doing, and know the American quality that goes in these stands and the materials and the tolerances on materials that we hold. There's way more to it than just a cast aluminum stand. I mean, sure, that's the foundation. And as we know, there's no expanded metal, no creaking when you move, that type of thing. But it goes so much deeper than that when, you know, we talk about zinc coating all of our hardware. I mean, you don't see the hardware on a lone wolf stand rusting, you know, after a year or months out in the, you know, it takes a long time, you know, the virgin nylon materials that we use on our washers. And again, those tolerances, as you know, the one thing that you and I both rely on, a lot of these other guys with lone wolf, is knowing that if you've got a mature buck approaching you, the last thing on your mind needs to be that your stand could possibly make a creak or a noise when you go to reposition your feet, you go to stand up. And what I tell a lot of guys when I'm talking to them on the phone and they're asking questions, it's almost mind-blowing to them that when I tell them, hey, the first thing I do if I get an approaching deer and if I want to stand up for a shot, I literally grab the seat and pull it up with me as I go. And I know you probably do too. The last thing on my mind is that seat is ever going to make a noise on me. And that having that confidence level right there, there's a million things that can go wrong when you're chasing trophy or large mature whitetail. Your equipment, such as your tree stand, should not be one of the things that's on your mind or one thing that can go wrong. And, you know, I know you agree. You use it a lot. but educating people towards that again. The quality in, as things have progressed, over the years, we started with a great product in 2006, and it's evolved. There's little tweaks here and there, and it's getting to the point. I mean, it gets harder and harder to improve on a product that has been so fine-tuned over the years. But, for example, the castings have changed to kind of fit the new bows. I think parallel limbs are here to stay. And the built-in bow holder that was in the cast aluminum platform was always just a really cool, unique system. Lone Wolf has always had that, but some of these newer bows wouldn't fit in those older platforms. So when we redesigned that platform to fit most parallel limbs on the market today, it's one more efficiency that we almost take for granted, and it's basically being able to limit your movement, as you know, Todd. And so if you've got a bow sitting there between your knees on your stand, and you've got a deer approach, and to take a 6-inch movement to get to the handle of that bow rather than move around looking for your bow on a hook, that's another efficiency that some guys just they overlook as something that's very important to us that try to cross all our T's and dot our I's. I mean, we want to try to think of every efficiency possible when we're in the woods chasing these big deer. So on top of that, we've changed some of the coloring. The anodizing that we used for years, of course, is a great finish, but there can be a glare from it sometimes. And as some of our suppliers and people we work with have new technologies and could do different things, it's really evolved now to a textured powder coat that really absorbs the sun, much like flocking on a goose decoy head, if you're familiar with that, and something that blends in. Our colors, have changed over the years. Now we use kind of a dark matte finish brown, not only for the deer, but unfortunately you see guys, I hear about it all the time, where they got a tree stand stolen. Anytime we can eliminate something that stands out to a potential thief, I guess, in the woods on a high-end stand like that, we want to help that customer with that as well. So if you want to add to it, Todd, I mean, there has been changes. With most
every point. Every point you bring up, Jared, I'm like, I remember that. Or for anybody who isn't familiar, I've worked with Lone Wolf over the years and helped develop products and things of that nature. And just like what Jared was saying, just the details that go in these stands and these features have been built and tuned over literally 25, 30 years by some of the best whitetail hunters in the world. I mean, the customers literally have been a huge factor in the designs and the changes over the years. And I've been a part of some of them right in the trade show booth talking to guys, about different ideas and stuff that they have. But to put it in a layman's terms for anybody who's never used a Lone Wolf, the best way I can describe it is this. What makes a Lone Wolf, and what makes them famous and what makes everybody go crazy over them is the quietness. If there's one thing Lone Wolf does better than any other stand, and Jared was talking about it, back in the old days, we had standing on these cheapy hang-ons that we all used, and 20, 30 years ago, there weren't very many options, but I can remember going back to different stands I would hunt, and literally you'd be like, okay, I can't stand on that half of the platform, and I can't lean my way in this direction, otherwise it'll make a pop. So you would have to hunt around for spots on your stand where you could stand, and sometimes you just couldn't move, and you would be stuck, and you'd have to wait for the deer or whatever, but Lone Wolf just eliminates that. And half of the reason is the casting, and the other big part of it, which a lot of people don't think about when it comes to physics and design and stuff, is your ability to level these platforms and these seats are what actually contribute to that silence. If you twist everything on an angle, all the loads that are designed in these tree stands and the way that the parts are supposed to work, you're changing all of that. So it starts with a level platform and a level seat in order to achieve that level of quietness. And with the offset bracket and the different adjustment methods of the adjustment of the platform, side to side is such a huge factor, and Lone Wolf does it better than anyone. And that's half the battle, is just getting the gall darn things to level up in a tree. And as you guys all know, there's no such thing as a good tree in the right spot. It's non-existent, at least in 3 or 4 states that I've hunted in. On I don't even know how many tree stands I've set over the years, but y'all know what we're dealing with. And sometimes what makes a lone wolf so killer with those sticks is you don't have to use a cookie cutter approach. And that's the best thing in whitetail hunting, is to be able to adapt to a situation. And sometimes I'm out and I only put one stick up and I can climb up one branch and boom, hang my stand. They're just so versatile. You can use them in so many different circumstances, from the tip of Maine all the way to Florida. And you don't have to be 30 feet in the air to take advantage of it either. I mean, sometimes the best sets over the years, and Jared, you've probably heard as many crazy stories as I've heard from guys, who've killed some of these slammer whitetails, and they're doing it in some extremely unconventional ways. And half of the time it's just because no other hunters have thought to try it.
Absolutely. And Todd, you touched on a little bit too, some of the things that education-wise, the guys may see the lone wolf. I've had guys that have had their lone wolves for a while that understand the leveling and stuff on the platform and the seat. But one of the coolest things, I think, is the offset bracket on the back, which it is actually to the point it is so simple that I think some people overlook or don't understand exactly how much versatility and how much leveling right to left you can get out of such a simple mechanism. And so basically, there's 4 points of contact on the back of that offset bracket. And obviously, if you've got a telephone pole, it's going to fit your center 2 points of contact. Well, we don't have, especially in the Midwest here, we don't have many telephone poles in the woods. And we get these trees that lean left or right. And we actually search out hedge trees here because they make great cover and break your silhouette so well. And we've got a lot of them, especially in those thicker bedding areas and a lot of places where those mature deer are hanging out. The fact that you can actually offset, if you've got a tree that leans to the left, to be able to offset that bracket to the far two left points of contact, it is amazing how rock solid it can be, and your stand is still hanging perfectly straight. And that, coupled with the leveling on the post, the platform, and the seat, there's times, I'll hang and I take it for granted anymore. I use them so much. But you step back and you're like, wow, when you realize how much leveling you just got in a certain scenario where you hung that stand. And an example, my son last year, he killed a really super nice deer here in Illinois. And without that hang-on, the lone wolf hang-on with the offset bracket and the pivoting V bracket on our climbing sticks, there is no way we would have got in the hedge tree that we needed to be into to kill that deer. And looking back on that, if I would have had any other stand out there, there's no way we would have basically been selecting another tree close. We may have missed that deer by 30, 40 yards. So that's the type of stories, that I hear over and over. A gentleman just killed a new Oklahoma state record. I've been talking to on the phone, and he had made the comment that, without the lone wolf to be able to get into the area that he was in and be able to kill that deer, he couldn't have done it without his lone wolf setup. And that's cool to hear, over and over and over.
Another point I'd like to add, just what you were talking about, Jared, too, is for the guys who film, not only do you have to get one tree stand up there, but you have to get two, which means
exactly. Yep.
Somebody's going to be on a bad angle. And usually I try not to make it too bad on my camera guys. I usually try to split the angle, so to speak, because every tree kind of has an angle to it. But the offset bracket allows you to go either direction. I don't even know how many degrees. I mean, some of these trees we set up over the years been probably 20 to 30 degrees off from center. But like what Jared said, you can get them level and absolutely rock solid so that they're safe. You don't even have a concern. And that is half of the battle. You just got to be safe, period. But I want to comment, too. There are several other tree stands on the market that have these leveling systems. And some of them are very eccentric, very, very complicated with all kinds of mechanisms and round discs and holes and pins. And I cannot tell you how like, I look at those designs and I'm just like, I can only imagine what they would sound like on a cold November morning when it's 20 degrees and everything is covered in frost. And you're going to find every one of those little linkages and every little point of contact of metal just create an opportunity for noise. And that's why Lone Wolf is king. It's so simple the way it's designed. Simplicity is absolutely the best design of any kind. And that's where I think that's what separates Lone Wolf from everybody else, in my opinion, Jared. It's just the simplicity, the components, and one other thing I'm very proud of is being able to use a tree stand I know has American hands all over it before I'm going to be sitting in it and trusting my life with it. All these products, all the Lone Wolf tree stands are all built in Peoria, Illinois. Literally, Jake, our boy over there, he's one of the guys who works for Lone Wolf. He helps build these stands every day. Every single component part is touched and inspected during the assembly process. And my life is worth it. Jason, I know your life is worth it. Jared, your life's worth it. Your kid's life's worth it. That's where I think it's so worth the little bit of extra money. That you can trust every single tree stand that comes out of that factory because they're getting assembled here. They're getting touched and manufactured here. And so many products are coming in from overseas. And I'm not against importing. There's, some products you just can't avoid it. But, a lot of these products are coming in boxes going straight into these dealers and distributors and warehouses. And, there's not an American eye that looks at them. And to me, boy, the one product that we all use that you really want to, I think, invest in is something that you're going to be taking your own life, your own life in your hands, so to speak. So if you're going to cut costs someplace, just don't make a mistake of doing it at your tree stands because it'll end up costing you a big buck someday. And Jared, how many guys do you sell tree stands to in the middle of November after they've blown it because their tree stand made a noise?
It's amazing, and I now with, of course, technology and stuff, you would be amazed how many guys are literally ordering a stand online from their smartphone, from their tree stand, and they follow up with a phone call, and I hear the stories over and over. Yeah, they just blew a big opportunity on a large whitetail because their stand made a noise or they had a problem out there setting up, and I hear that a lot. And of course, with technology now, it's easy for guys. They'll get on their smartphone and they'll order them. And what we want to educate guys before that. We want them to take the jump and just challenge them, just like we have all learned. I used everything under the sun back in the day, just like you, Todd. And, Jason, you were talking about it before we made that switch. And it was just like turning on a light bulb, and it was night and day difference. And there's a great video on our website now, too, that actually shows when we hang and hunt. Of course, we talk about changing the way you hunt. I mean, you still have to use your good woodmanship skills. I mean, you got to be a good hunter, play the wind, alter your exit. Todd, you've done numerous stories and videos on exit strategies and entry strategies into those stand locations and stuff. Where you hang these stands, that's all important. But having the tools coupled with those tactics that you can slide in and do this extremely quietly, it will truly make you more successful. And, we'll get into them. I want to talk about some maintenance and stuff on these stands too, because there are just so many things to touch on. One of the things to elaborate on is, the American hands on these products. I think it's really, really cool if you sit and think about it, from the guys that are actually machining components and stuff to, all the way through the assembly, and even our carriers, our UPS, our FedEx rep. These guys are using our product, which is really cool to me. The guy that's delivering it to your door is a guy that's passionate about the product himself and has had success with it. And these guys assembling the stands, they're like you and I. I mean, they can't wait to get out in the evening or get out on the weekends to actually put these stands that they're building to use, and to have that type of knowledge that goes into those stands where someone actually understands why the tension needs to be the way it is on a certain boulder on a seat, so it doesn't make any noise because they've been there. They know why it needs to perform. Man, that is so unique and so cool if you think about it, that these guys take pride in every large whitetail or every successful hunt that is made out of a lone wolf tree stand. And when I get to share stories with them that I hear on the phone, these guys are passionate about it and love hearing that, which is so cool.
One of the things that I wanted to say, Jared, just as a sort of a compliment to your staff, we all were down at the ATA show, and we all know it's easy to get caught up in everything that's taking place there. You guys know, and maybe a lot of our listeners don't, I'm a sales guy, and I work in the sales business, and so I guess, maybe studying people, and maybe that's a bad thing, maybe that's a good thing. But the one thing that I can tell you is in stopping by your booth and talking with each of the guys that you had there, man, they believe in your product, and I think probably one of the reasons they believe in it is because they've used it so much. But when you're able to talk to someone that so passionately believes in their product, it's a whole lot better customer service experience. From a guy who deals with it every day, I just wanted to say it was a treat to be able to talk to those guys, to see their enthusiasm for what they do, because let's be honest, there's not a ton of people that are jumping up and down about their job every day. Your guys definitely did, and they represented your product well, and I could just see their belief in it, and it was refreshing to see that. So my hat's off to them for the job that they do, and I was impressed, to say the least. But earlier you alluded to talking about maintenance, and that's something that I wanted to learn a little bit about today, because some of my stands are 9 years old now, and I noticed, some of them might have a nick in the cable. Maybe one of the straps is getting old because I'm lazy and I haven't taken some of them down for 5 years or 3 years or whatever the number is. What could you tell us in terms of some, let's just call them best practices that you would go by for yourself in terms of maintaining those stands? Because there's some moving parts there that may need some love every now and again. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. And first of all, thank you very much on the compliments on the employees and the guys here. They are passionate about it. It's for good reason. They want to be evangelists for something that works for them and get the word out. So that's cool. I thank you for that. But getting back to maintenance, some of the things you talked about, there's some obvious signs, any nicks in those cables and stuff on your hang-ons, any fraying and fading of the straps. But, one of the things I want to touch with first, these stands are so easy to hang and they're easy to take down. And, we don't want people leaving stands out in the woods for extended periods of time. These stands are so efficient, as we all know, and we're mobile. A lot of times we're setting these stands up every time we're going out and hunting, and we're moving. It might be 60, 70 yards, but we're moving them. So, I would first, tell people, don't leave your stands out there over extended periods of time. Bring them in. You want to check these stands out. If you can, every time you use them, give them a look. The cool thing that Jason, you had mentioned, is there's not a lot of moving parts. One of the keys to the Lone Wolf stands, and Todd touched on it, it's simplicity. Less is more sometimes. And I tell you, some of the engineering and stuff that has went into these stands from day one is simplifying everything. As you know, there's no welds on these stands. So anytime you can eliminate extra moving parts and components that are unneeded, that's another way to create a noise or a possible problem. So starting with that, there's, especially on our hang-on stands, you're looking at very limited moving parts. We zinc coat all the hardware, as we said, but this is no different than your chainsaw, your car, any of those tools. These things will literally last your hunting career if you keep up on a general common sense maintenance practice. And besides the obvious, the frayed straps that you see or a nick in a cable, let's be proactive on this. Replacement parts and hardware kits are very inexpensive. So being proactive, I think, is the key on maintenance on these tree stands. So, everyone, someone asked me, well, how often do I need to change those straps? It's a tough question sometimes because everybody uses these stands different. A mobile setup that you're taking in and out is maybe going to be a little different than one that you may leave for a couple weeks at a time out there exposed to the elements. But, some of those key signs, if you start having a component, whether it's a hinge knob or a seat connection, platform connection, that starts to get loose on you, it's because that lock nut, the threads in those lock nuts are starting to stretch and wear. That's a good telltale tell sign right there, hey, I need to replace that hardware. And when we do it, make some documentation on this stuff. Hey, I replaced it, and that's a good time if you've got one bolt that's starting to have some play because maybe a lock nut, replace that whole bolt assembly on that stand. Again, it's inexpensive, and document that. Hey, I changed these out 2017, going into the, before the season started, and, your straps. Check all the sewing on them. Check if the squirrels maybe chewed on something. You definitely want to stay up on the maintenance on those straps. One of the things that guys can overlook, the cam buckles are a key to our quietness. We don't believe in ratchet straps. It's hard to hang and hunt out of a stand that you just sat there and ratcheted. Impossible in my opinion. So these cam buckles have a spring that keeps the tension on that strap. If you leave these stands out in the elements for extended periods of time, what can happen is the ice can get in there and it can expand and contract, and it can start taking the tension off of some of those springs. That's something you want to check, quite regularly to make sure that the tension on those cam buckles are staying tight. Getting to the cables. All our cables are rubber coated. The eyelets are all zinc coated. If you ever see a nick in that rubber coating, it's one of those things. Don't wait till the cable starts rusting. Be proactive. They're $19.99 to replace a set of cables on our hang-on stands with the hardware. Replace those cables out. Go ahead.
And the cool part you're talking about with all the replacement parts, Jared, is that any other tree stand or most other tree stands on the market, they're disposable products. They're literally, you buy one, you use it for a few years, either leave it up in a tree until the tree breaks it, or you literally just throw them away. Lone Wolf, it truly is a product you can have for your whole hunting career, and replacement parts are available if you ever need them. And that to me is awesome as just a hardcore hunter, because as anybody knows, when you use a variety of these tree stands long enough and you use them hard like we do, over a period of time, you're going to go through stuff. But it's so cool to have a company that you can buy replacement parts right from their website, and it's very minimal, guys. I'm still using my same Lone Wolf I got. I believe it was about 16 or 17 years ago, and it's still dead silent. And Jared, I don't think I've ever even replaced a nut or bolt really on any of my stands outside of belts, and occasionally you'll get a squirrel that'll eat a pad.
We want to stay up even if you're not. At some point, the crazy thing is sometimes because of the zinc coating on the hardware and this and that, unless they get scratched and stuff, you're not going to see those signs of rust. So guys feel so safe and secure because these things have been performers year after year after year. That's where the proactive comes in, that I really think, okay, besides that, some of those obvious, eventually, something can fatigue. So if you're not seeing rust and stuff, there's certain components that take more pressure, as on a climber or whatnot than they may on a hang-on. So, just a common sense, hey, I've had this thing 6 years. I've never done any maintenance on it. It's $7.95 to replace the hardware on this stand. Let's, just be proactive and do it. And one thing that some people may not know is we use a silicone lube on every one of these components, these moving components. And Todd, as you know, that silicone lube, it lasts for years in there to keep things, keep the moisture wicked away, keep things moving freely and fluently without making any noise. So if nothing else, just replacing that to when we send out a hardware kit, these guys physically lube every one of those components before that kit goes out. And, our general, cables and replacement belts and offset brackets and that type of thing can be found on our website. The one thing that we do, and we do this a lot, is we like that intimacy with the customer. We like, in today's world, you talk to so many answer machines and stuff, and not here. We talk to our customers on the phone, and the hardware kits can all be ordered for these stands, but we want you to call in on a hardware kit, and they're available because we want to make sure that you're getting the right components for the right stand, and can explain some of that stuff, as far as the silicone lube and all those little things that may not be noticed on the surface. We want people to understand why their stand works the way it does and functions, and that's very, very important to us and very important to me to be able to educate people on, not why does it work, but hey, how do you get to that point, and what are these important things that I need to be looking at?
So just to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying, it's because I had in my head before, talking to you today, Jared, that I was going to be concerned with the straps and the cables, and it sounds like those are really important, and obviously they're really important for obvious reasons. However, you're talking about a hardware kit that it sounds like could be for one of the places where the seat is either hinging or the shaft that goes down to the platform is hinging.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Every nut and bolt.
Okay.
And we sell them in assemblies for a hang-on stand. You've got two main bolts with a washer assembly. There's some spacers and a lock nut where the seat attaches to the post and where the post attaches to the platform. There's also the Verso buttons, that your straps go around. Some of those things, you may have more life on because they don't take as much pressure, but it's all stuff that needs to be looked at, addressed, and it sometimes needs to be replaced. And, we've talked so much about hang-on stands. We really haven't gotten the climbers too much, but, our climbers are unique, too, in the industry, I guess, with our traction belt that we use. It's a rubber traction belt, but there's 9 braided steel cables that run through that traction belt, and that's where your strength comes from. So, again, if there's any nicks or anything obvious, maybe you hit it with your Wicked Tree Gear saw by accident. Maybe, maybe it got slammed in the tailgate of your truck. Those things, yes, definitely, you're replacing it. Outside of that, we recommend every 3 to 5 years on a general maintenance schedule to replace those traction belts, and I'll tell you why. Guys like us, we're going to hunt in no matter what the elements are. The deer are out there moving, we're going to be out there after them. So when you're hunting in the moisture or in the rain, and say the moisture starts drawing up into those steel cables inside that belt, even if you take that stand in and set it in a dry spot, that moisture can still be stuck up inside there. So what can happen if you're not proactive and you don't stay on a maintenance schedule, that moisture sitting in there corroding and rusting those steel cables. So when you start going years and years and years of doing that, that's where you're going to get into a situation where, those fibers in the cables and stuff start breaking down. So take it from us, stay on that schedule, 3 to 5 years on your traction belts. You've got some moving components on your climbers. If you start losing some tension on a bolt, on, say, our hinge knobs that allow the stand to collapse or to set up, that's when okay, I got a lock nut. Maybe the threads are getting stripped on. I believe, off the top of my head, I think it's $9.95 for a complete hardware kit for the top section of a climber. $7.95 for the hardware kit for the foot platform of a climber. Pretty inexpensive when you think about it. Every so many years to stay on top of that, to have a product that will literally be something you can pass down to your son, and it's going to last your hunting career. So very important on the maintenance stuff. We can touch on, we could touch
and
on
I was curious, or I wanted to mention too, I know a lot of guys like out there who are maybe smaller guys are thinking to themselves, boy, I can't imagine, breaking a bolt on a lone wolf tree stand or this, that, or the other. But I know after working the booth with Lone Wolf many years ago, there are some big guys that are using these tree stands, and the weight capacity of a Lone Wolf, is it still 350, Jared?
Yes, it is. Yep.
350 pounds. So, and trust me, there are guys pushing that limit when you meet them, some of these dudes at the shows. I'm talking, and there's NFL football players, there's UFC guys. On top of that, a whole lot of big dudes that are using these stands. So it's not the little guys that are, it's common sense. The bigger you are, the heavier your load is, you're going to want to do these maintenance more and more. But my rule of thumb, Jared, and it's kind of my favorite thing to do each year, it's like my midsummer prep, and it's getting ready to kill. And there's nothing I enjoy more than taking my lone wolves out, going through every nut and bolt, making sure the tension's correct, checking everything, just like what Jared was talking about, checking your belts. And I think I've got about 30 of them now hanging, and some of them stay out all year. Those I go in, I'll pull, do a full maintenance program. Others are my running gun sets where they don't need as much love each year. But it's something I actually enjoy doing because it's become as big of a tool for killing big whitetails for me as my bow. And that's the truth. Like, it's
absolutely, yep.
It's right up there as much of an important, even more so than a wicked saw, to be honest with you, because you can still go hunting without a saw, and I designed those things. But
yeah.
I'm telling you, man, it's one of the tools that allows us to do what we do. Can you kill deer out of other stands? Sure. Once you use the lone wolf, you understand why we all do, and you'd be surprised how many professionals use lone wolves, even when they're not necessarily sponsored by Lone Wolf, just as cameraman stands and things like that. Because I'll tell you, you learn very early in your hunting careers, and you start talking with guys who have killed big, mature deer. And I'm not reinventing the wheel. There were a bunch of dudes who were doing it before me. But the one common trait is you start talking to guys, and boy, they're really specific about certain pieces of equipment. That's what they rely on to get the job done. And for me, the way I hunt as a bow hunter, 100% of the time, like lone wolf is such a part of my game plan, I just can't imagine using anything else. That's why I love talking about them so much, because I don't look at it as a sales tactic or trying to sell tree stands. I'm looking at it as trying to help guys kill deer, and this is just one of those huge tools. It's one of the biggest, I think.
Right, and I agree, and I love the fact that you call it a tool. That's exactly what I do, because it is. I mean, it's the most important part of our arsenal as far as gear. Even more so, I think there's a lot of good bows on the market that a guy can use. But it's funny. I hear it over and over from our buddy Adam Hayes. From Team 200. Most people know Adam's success. He killed his fourth deer with over 200 inches with a bow this year, and he's been so successful. And he tells me over and over, he said, Jared, he goes, the one piece of equipment that I cannot get this job done without is going to be the lone wolf stand. And of course, he loves the little assault hang-on stands, to be able to get where he needs to go. And I always think that's cool, from someone as successful as he is and as fanatic as he is about going after these giant whitetail. He knows there's one thing in his arsenal that he can't replace because of some of the things we've talked about, and that's his lone wolf stand, which is, it says something. And, guys need to take note of that. I mean, he's not blowing smoke. No. He's doing it for a reason. I mean, it gets the job done for him year after year.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Hayes is the type of guy who's out there busting his tail, I'll say year-round, but during the fall, like Jared, I mean, these big deer, you don't kill these big Boone and Crockett's by sitting in the stand that everybody else has been sitting in for 20 years.
Right. Exactly.
You don't set them sitting on just that typical funnel or pinch point. These bucks survive to that age, and sometimes the only way you can really kill them is by truly doing what no one else has ever done, which is getting so aggressive that you literally put yourself right in their core area. And Adam does that. I do that. I've learned from other guys who do that. And you slowly start to realize there's certain things out there that are the real deal. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's sold as the real deal that isn't. And it takes experience. But I think just by following, if you followed White Knuckle for any period of time, the guys who hunt our team see us in the field, what we use, there's a pretty close correlation between success and the products we use. And that's no joke. We've turned down a lot of product sponsors from a lot of different products over the years, primarily because I just couldn't get behind them enough where, I can't do it. I have this truth bone in my body where I have to, my real goal is to help guys kill bigger deer. So the only tools we really like to promote are the ones that, really make a significant difference and also stand out from all the competition that's out there. And that's one thing, there's a bunch of tree stand companies to choose from. And I have worked with a lot of different companies in the industry. And I'll say this much, Jared and the group of people that work for him are probably the nicest true Christian folks I've ever worked with. They aren't in business to try to make millions and millions of dollars. They're in business because They don't know anything else. They love their products, and they take pride in every stand that they sell and every stand they build. And I can relate to that so much as a manufacturing guy and a guy who built a brand like Wicked. We do the same thing. I mean, to me, it's everything. And they take so much pride in every single product they ship out. You'll see it in every detail down to the packaging. And that's why we work with Lone Wolf. And Jared, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate what you guys do. And I know over the years, you've had a lot of different opportunities to try to cut corners in order to make more money or to do this. And Jared's always been the type of guy, and Lone Wolf's always been the type of company that they don't cut corners. They do it the way it should be, and they might be a little more expensive, but you definitely get what you pay for. And boy, once you try one, you'll never use a different tree stand.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. You know, you guys talked a little bit about run and gun sets, and certainly we're going to run out of time here to get too deep into that issue. But for me, converse to Todd, and I'm not sure the ground that you're hunting on, Jared, but for me, the quietness is probably what makes the bigger deal for me, because, you know, last year I got to kill the biggest buck of my life, and I honestly believe I could not have done it had I not had the luxury of having 4 sticks and a stand to go in there, zip up a tree, hang it up, be quiet, get out of there. The next time we came in, come in with a cameraman stand, hang it up quietly, and hunt. And you know, that's really not running and gunning by a lot of people's definition, but again, it goes back to that quietness, and I can unequivocally say that there's no other stand that I would use, because you just can't. I don't think that you can get it accomplished otherwise.
Sure, and you know, it's funny, and we could go on and on and on about this whole system. I love maybe a follow-up at some time to maybe do a podcast on just that. I mean, getting into more of the detail on that stuff, but I know it's mind-blowing to some people when we talk about literally hanging these stands under a buck's nose, and we're doing just that. I mean, there's so many times you play the wind that we'll literally hang these stands undetected with a deer bedded within 60, 70 yards in these bedding areas all the time. And, you know, one of the reasons that we came up with that little silent tote, which is a T that pops into the cam of our bow when we pull it up rather than a swivel snap, is because so many times I'm hanging a stand and I no more than crawl into my stand, and I look up and a deer is already within 15, 20 yards coming right through me. And to be, you got your bow halfway up the tree, and to be able to get it up and efficiently get an arrow knocked. I mean, that's crazy stuff if you think about it, but it happens all the time. And I know anyone that have used this system can attest to the same thing. And, you know, like I said, we could go on and on and on about that. But, you know, one thing I do want to touch on, too, that I think is very important before we run out of time is safety. And I know you guys both agree, too, but there's a huge push. I mean, we need to educate people. I want people, you know, go out and buy the best harness that you can afford that's going to fit you right, and it's going to be comfortable for you with all the lifelines, the safety lines, the equipment, you know, the rope assemblies, the Prusik knot systems nowadays are so efficient and so nice. There is absolutely no excuse. When we're hanging these sets, I mean, we're literally going to 18 foot in about 6.5 minutes to having our bow in our hand, and we're doing it being attached the entire time from the ground up. And that is one thing I want to make sure everyone knows the importance. Wear your harness, stay attached. It is so important. And once you get into that routine, it's second nature. You do it and you don't even think about it with the kind of equipment.
And it's more enjoyable too, Jared.
It is. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, you feel safe, you feel secure. But like I said, with the efficiency of the harness systems, and I'm not saying you have to buy a Lone Wolf harness, there's a lot of good harnesses out there. Pick the one that you like the best and wear it.
That's something I switched up 10 years ago. I started wearing a harness, and I was the guy who climbed around in a tree like a monkey, and I didn't need one, and, you know, I'm better than that, right? Well, I had a good friend who took a dig, and he's paralyzed from the chest down now. And he was an active guy in great shape. And it kind of was just like that. It truly can happen to anybody. I also have other good close friends who are some of the best hunters I know of who have fallen out of tree stands. Guys, I mean, it's you think killing these deer is tough now? Try doing it from a wheelchair. Do yourself a favor. Just start wearing a harness. It takes an extra couple seconds, and once you get used to them, you'll find that you love them, and it makes hunting so much more enjoyable, especially the safe lines. I can't tell you how many shady trees I've climbed up over the years with muddy boots and cold hands in the pitch black of dark while you're trying not to make any noise with 70 pounds of crap hanging off your back. And it gets old after a while, and you start to realize and you start to come to the conclusion, like, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. When are you going to fall? And about 3 years ago was my last year not using safe lines. One of my cameraman, Kyle, was climbing down one of our sets and just happened to hit a step with a muddy boot and too much weight and momentum on his back. And thankfully, he was only about 10 feet off the ground, but the noise of him hitting the ground wasn't enough where I said, that's it. So I went out and bought, I don't know, I think like 30 safe lines from me, Jared, and went out and set them all up. And it's the greatest thing in the world, especially during hunting season, when you're trying to slink up a tree quietly and you can take your time and you can stop and you can, even midway up the tree, I do this. You're attached to the tree. You don't have to worry about nothing. And you can stop and you can look around a little bit, see if there's a deer. Okay, take a couple more sticks out. It's just enjoyable. You can eliminate that possibility. And you know what? If you're married, if you have kids, do it for your wife, do it for your kids. And if not, just do it for your pocketbook, because a trip to the emergency room is a lot more expensive than safe lines, man. Period.
It's a no-brainer. And, you know, I think guys out there are getting more educated to this. And again, as equipment evolves and becomes more efficient, there really is no excuse anymore at all for not being attached from the ground up. And you know, with climbers now, with the rope assemblies and stuff, so easy to put the rope assembly around the tree, click into the tether of your harness at the ground level, and as you climb, you shove it up in front of you, climb to it, shove it up again, and you're attached at all times. If you're using a climber, you got to cut those branches anyway, so you have no obstructions to go up, you know, up the tree all the way and never be undetached, that's key. Just, you know, that is one thing that I think is so important, that we just want to make sure that guys are listening on that and do it. I mean, just do it for yourself, your family. I agree totally, Todd.
You know, as I'm listening to you guys and taking notes, as I often do when I do these, it just, you know, occurred to me that in many ways we started out this podcast, and it probably sounded a bit like an infomercial, and it's not because Jared sponsors us. I think we could both, with deep conviction, say with or without his sponsorship, and Jared, we're still expecting you to sponsor us. We would use. We don't sponsor a lot
of shows, and I will say that the guys that we sponsor, we know, just like the Team 200 guys. I mean, those guys, you guys, you'll be using Lone Wolf whether we do or not, but the reason we sponsor those shows is because of the commitment that y'all have had for years, because you have so much belief in the product, because you understand it and you use it. And it's about working with people that can truly educate others. Our thing, it's not just selling tree stands. We're passionate about the way these work. As you know, we want more people to experience what we're experiencing in the woods, and trying to get people to just try it one time and be one of those guys that says, you know, hey, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago. Trust us, you know?
And that's, I think, one of the coolest things about representing Lone Wolf is it is kind of like a family, but more than that, when it's our job to sell these products to a certain degree to carry out our end of the sponsorship. But for me, it's one of those products. If I can get a guy to try a Lone Wolf stand for the first time, not only are they going to love their stand and they're probably going to become a customer for life, but then they're going to automatically associate us to that and say, thank you for getting me to finally try one. And whether it's Lone Wolf tree stands, an Ozonics, a Wicked Saw, I mean, the list goes on with all these different products that we've promoted. but the right products are the ones that I want to sell because, dude, those people, Jared, you've experienced it a bunch of times at the booth, and that's kind of what really propelled me, I think, probably into eventually getting into Wicked was when you feel that passion from your customer base coming to your booth and stopping to say, dude, that is the best stand, and they show you their pictures back in the day, Jared. You remember the old Polaroid days where guys would carry around their trophy photos because nobody had phones. And they'd pull out their photos and they'd show you each year. And I remember ATA show after ATA show, you develop these relationships with these guys because they'd come to buy their tools from you. And then the next year they'd show you what they did with it. And these people are crazy. Like they had the craziest Lone Wolves, always had the hardcore, craziest fan base just because the product is that good. And you see it through the guys who build it like Jake or Jared. They're so passionate about it because it's like, dude, it's a part of their blood, just like it is a part of ours. And it's not trying to sell something. It's trying to get somebody a bigger buck next year or trying to have somebody have a more safer time in the woods or a more enjoyable time. But I'll say this much, Jared, remember the days of using the garbage hang-on sticks and everything? How much more enjoyable and how much faster is it to set a Lone Wolf stand? I mean,
yeah, it's night and day, I mean, just amazing. And I still remember on another podcast I had talked about the day that the first time we had actually been introduced to the Lone Wolf product, and it was just like it hit us so hard that what are we doing? I knew of it, knew they were expensive. I was young, trying to afford a bunch of stands. Well, what we realized is you didn't need. I mean, it's great to have them, but you can do so much more with fewer Lone Wolf stands. Just one complete set, if you're into hanging and hunting, you can get the job done and do everything you need to do with that setup. And that's what we learned, and we really started changing the way we hunt. And ever since then, I mean, at the time, I think we had an unbelievable amount of stands, a little of everything, in the woods. Today, I could have more stands in the woods than ever before in my life. And I don't. I have not even a third of them because of the versatility and the ease of use on these stands. And you understand what I'm talking about, keeping these spots fresh and hunting virgin. We call them virgin locations. Morning and night, if it doesn't produce, we're off, moving to a different location. And it's no joke when we say it changes the way you hunt. It truly will change the way you hunt. You're going to start hunting. If you're hunting for bigger deer with that system, you will start seeing bigger deer if you're hunting bigger deer. And I know you understand that, Todd. I'd love to get into that discussion sometime with people. And
and you hit the nail on the head, Jared. Once I had about 5 or 6 different stands at the time when I got my first Lone Wolf, and I literally was like, okay, I don't want to use any of my other stands. So I'd rather set up a stand and 4 sticks every hunt than use any of the other stands. And it didn't take me very long to start to realize that just that mentality will kill more deer just because you are in a more flexible situation. You're not stuck to that same tree, that same stand. And there's a reason why you don't see deer after 1 or 2 sets, or it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's just, man, that virgin hunt. So yeah, we could get into that, and we're going to continue to try to touch on all these different things with Lone Wolf throughout the rest of our podcast throughout the season. And as such an important part of our arsenal of tools during the different times of the year, we'll try to bring Jared back when it makes sense to discuss maybe some important factors of that time of year. And certainly when we get closer to hunting season, I want to get more into the run and gun tactics. And also now I set a lot of my stands as almost like jump points where I've got to stand in a position where I know I can get a view into the areas where there may be a buck I'm going after, and then that becomes my jump point. But I think from the White Knuckle podcast, we can thank you so very much for making your first appearance with us, Jared, and we look forward to very many more in the future, and can't see what's coming up next with Lone Wolf.
Well, I appreciate that and enjoyed the podcast. And if you're out there, you're listening to it too, join us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, of course, the website, mobile friendly, get on, check things out. It's lonewolfhuntingproducts.com. And any questions, Todd, Jason, our Team 200 guys, talk to any of them, but give us a call. I mean, I love talking to people on the phone. If you got any questions on education, on how the product works, I mean, I can, with the videos that we have online for support, or just, we want to talk to you and help you get into this system and make you a better hunter. So please give us a call, or like I said, Todd is passionate, obviously, about this product. Give Todd a call. He loves to explain some of that stuff to you.
One of the cool things about getting involved with White Knuckle a long time ago is when we did, we'll call it Make the Switch, which was right away after attending your film school in June of I want to say it was 07 or 08, whatever the case may be. I remember like it was yesterday, David getting the call, because I was so surprised. He's like, I ordered the stands and I got them, and then it was, several years later, he called me back and he had ordered some more, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's like, I talked to Jared, the actual owner. He answered the phone, and I said, what? And he said, yeah, I got to talk to him. He told me about the stand. He told me this and told me that. So, I've called down before too and gotten the privilege to talk to you before I had this position. And it is nice to know that your company is big in the sense of what they offer, but it's small in the sense that it's personalized. And I think each one of us can appreciate that. So thanks for having the time taking the time to be on the show. And I think, Todd, we heard a commitment from Jared to come back and talk a little bit about some run and gun tactic. Is that possible, Jared?
Absolutely. I'd love to get into some of those discussions and just further the education. We've kind of touched on Lone Wolf and what it's about, but truly start getting into, I think Todd and I both, could talk forever about some of the little fine tuning and little different tips and stuff that we take a step further on an already quiet product to, we call it idiot proof. And, if there's something that could go wrong out there, it will. So if you can eliminate all those little possibilities, it's going to make you a better hunter, make you quieter. And I think we could talk for a half an hour to an hour just on that alone, but definitely would love to get into some of that.
Jared, I could talk about how I use 475 yards of camel cloth tape on every tree stand I have because I'm so stupid about every little dumb thing. But that is like my favorite thing, is the tweaking and the tuning and making it yours. And I'll tell you, over the years, how many Lone Wolf customers have you talked to who, like, dude, they're like designing add-on accessories and like, I did this and I put some tape here to hold this product, or, my saw or whatever. Once you buy one, you'll understand, but it really is just a foundation product. Once you get your foot in the door, so to speak, you're going to understand what the hype is all about. And I'll put my name on it and say, if you buy a Lone Wolf and you're not happy with it, I'll buy it from you. Because I'm that confident that if you buy one, you'll call me or PM me or Jared or Jason. They're that good, and we wouldn't be promoting them if they weren't.
Absolutely not. No, I couldn't agree more. Again, thanks. We got to wrap things up as we're taking a lot of Jared's time here, but thanks for taking the time to educate us a little bit more on how we can better really protect ourselves with respect to the safety aspect of using those stands when it comes time to put them up a tree again next fall. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And again, do you just want to tell us one more time? I know you mentioned it before, but where can we go ahead and order those? I know that there's some standardized parts that you have available on the website, but there's others that you'd need us to call in for. Just tell us again how we can get a hold of you.
You can go to the website at lonewolfhuntingproducts.com. It's going to, all the stands and sticks and, of course, accessories. And, there are a lot of replacement parts on the website. If there's something that's not on there as far as hardware kits, especially nuts and bolts for things, give us a call. It's 309-691-WOLF. And we can walk you through exactly what you need for your stand and get you taken care of, and we'd love to talk with you about that stuff. So, again, follow us. There's a lot of good information, too, and updates on our Facebook page, and and some cool up-to-date stuff on Instagram, where during the season we're sharing a lot of photos of guys' success out of Lone Wolf stands, and I would encourage you to follow us on all those avenues just to stay in touch.
Well, there you have it. I think we could call that episode number 1 with Jared Schlipf, owner of Lone Wolf Portable Tree Stands. What a ton of information that we got there. I think the biggest takeaway for me was not only do you need to be replacing those straps and the cables, but also those nuts and bolts, etc., that are on those hinge points on the seat and on the platform. So if you need any of those things, I'll have the telephone number along with the website in the show notes. You can go ahead and reference that and give Jared or any of his employees down there a call, and they'll be happy to take care of you. Again, I look forward to the next time that we get to talk with Jared, as I think we're going to get into a little bit more of Todd and Jared's tactics when they're doing run and gun sets, and that should be a lot of fun to listen to. Well, in addition to having Jared on again, we're going to have a ton of other guests. We're going to have some outdoor personalities. We're going to talk about shed dogs. We're going to talk about shed hunting. We're going to talk about everything that revolves around the world of the whitetail and whitetail bow hunting. And hey, do me a favor, subscribe to this podcast. If you're an Apple person, grab your device and go to the iTunes store and search for White Knuckle Podcast. This will help you to download the free podcast app produced by Apple, and then subscribe to the show from within that app. Every time I download or produce a new podcast, you'll get it downloaded right to your device. For Android listeners, download the Stitcher app. That's free. That will give you access to any of the podcasts we do as well. For any podcast enthusiasts, if you've already listened to the podcast and know a whole lot about podcasts or podcatcher, then you can grab the RSS feed and insert that link into your podcatcher. For those who don't have a mobile device, go ahead and click on the link on Facebook, and you'll be able to listen to the podcast simply by clicking on the link on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. In all seriousness, we certainly appreciate your support. As always, if you'd like to leave comments, do so in the comment section. If you would, please go ahead and do a review of our podcast. Reviews are how we get better at what it is that we do. With that, I'm going to leave you with one final thought, and I got this from a good sponsor of ours. That thought comes from Proverbs 27, verse 17, and it says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one brother sharpens another." With that, have a great rest of your day, and from all of us here at White Knuckle, thanks again for listening. Now go out there and be awesome.